Hi guys, welcome to this lecture. The topic of this lecture is Kotlin extension functions, and we're going to get started with an overview. Let's get started. So, what are extension functions? Extension functions in Kotlin allow you to add new functions to existing classes without modifying their source code. This feature is particularly useful when you need to add functionality to a class that you do not have access to or do not want to modify directly. Extension functions are defined outside the class and use the class name as the receiver type. To put it simply, an extension function is like giving a new skill to an existing object without changing its original design. Imagine you have a tool, like a hammer, and you suddenly give it the ability to also act as a screwdriver without altering its core hammer functionality. This makes the tool more versatile without changing its basic nature. All right, let's dive into some code examples. Let's get started with the extension functions. Firstly, we have the extension function for a string class. So the extension function here adds a new method to the string class called add exclamation right here. It takes the current string this and adds an exclamation mark to the end. So here. This part right here, fun string dot add exclamation string defines the extension function for string. This part right here appends an exclamation mark to the original string. Simply put, an extension function is like giving a new superpower to an existing class. Here, we are giving the string class the ability to add an exclamation mark to the end of any string. Isn't that cool? Next, we have extension function for the list class. What does that mean? Remember, T here means type. Any type. Okay, you remember that from the previous lectures. I assure you. So, extension function here. This function adds a new method to the list class called second or null. It returns the second element in the list if there is one. Otherwise, it returns null. Let's break down the code. Here, the first part defines the extension function for list with generic type T. So it can be anything, a string or an integer, so numbers or text. This part right here, if this size is greater than 1, then it checks if the list has more than one element and returns the second element, or null if it doesn't. Okay, so it's a list of items. If it has more than one element, it will return the second element, but if it doesn't, it will return null, which means it's empty. Okay. This extension function lets any list check if it has a second element and return it. If there isn't a second element, it returns null. Next, we have the extension property for the int class right here. And the extension property here adds a new property to the int class called isEven. Right here. It checks if the integer is even. This first line here, val int dot is even, and is of type boolean, so true or false. It defines the extension property for integer, for int. The second line here checks if the integer is divisible by 2 with no remainder, even number. This extension property lets any integer tell you whether it's even or not. Cool. Next, let's move on to the main function here. You can see it's quite a bit of code, but don't worry, we'll go through it. Firstly, we use the extension function here. And so this is the extension function, right? Add exclamation. But firstly, we create a string called hello. Then we call the add exclamation extension function to add an exclamation mark. And finally, we print the result. Simply put, we use the new superpower we gave to strings to add an exclamation mark to hello. Secondly, we use the extension function on a list. The first line here creates a list of numbers 1, 2, and 3. The second line here calls the second or null extension function, the part that is blue here essentially, to get the second element. And the third line here prints the second number. Simply put, we use the new superpower we gave to list to get the second number from a list. Next, we use the extension function on an int, right? So right here, okay? We have the number 4, which creates an integer number. Then we have this line, which uses the isEven extension property to check if the number is even. And then basically we use the new property we gave to integers to check if the number is even. Right here. So to summarize, extension functions allow you to add new functions to existing classes without modifying their code. It's like giving existing objects new superpowers. Extension properties allow you to add new properties to existing classes. It's like giving existing objects new attributes. In the main function, we demonstrated how to use extension functions and properties on strings, lists, and integers, showing how these enhancements can make code more expressive and convenient. I would definitely agree that this is convenient. This is definitely something that you want to add as a tool into your toolkit when you're writing your code, when you're, possibly making applications. And this is the full main function. Again, all of the code is in the description below this lecture, so feel free to copy it from there and play around with it. Thank you so much for joining me on this lecture. I hope to see you in the next one, and maybe enjoy a short break in between so you're refreshed, you're energized. Personally, I just had a cup of herbal tea, and that was incredible. All right, let's see you in the next lecture. Thank you so much.